Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're back here with another one of iCabbi's Fleet Beats. My name is Andrew Morton. I'm the Director of Sales for iCabbi here in North America. And today I'm being joined by John Bolabasis from Texas Taxi. John, how you doing? How you holding up?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. We survived the brief winter storm that came through Texas the last 2 weeks.
That's good. I know we talked a little bit before the interview, so you guys are starting to thaw out. Life is starting to hopefully return to normal, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right.
Push it as it can. So John, I appreciate you taking time for me. I think when we think about Texas Taxi and you in particular team, you guys are pretty well known throughout the industry. I think you've got a really interesting backstory in terms of how you came into taxi. So for those of our customers that don't know you, can you share a little bit about your background and how you ended up here with Texas?
Yeah, great. Yeah, good question. It's always an interesting story. I've been with the Texas Taxi Group going on my 11th year. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my wife and I and our 3 children moved from Pittsburgh to Texas. So prior to being in the taxi cab business, I'm actually a mechanical engineer, a licensed professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania. And I owned and operated a large design build mechanical construction and service business. And I had an opportunity to sell that business, and I did. And people say, well, how do you go from being a mechanical engineer, doing mechanical systems, to running a taxi cab business? Well, you know, that's a damn good question. I get asked that quite often. It's still a service business. The business I was in was service, and this business is service. And there's kind of a couple basic business tenets that everyone should keep in mind of running a business: people management, risk management, and financial management. And when you can understand those 3 sectors and have an appreciation on how they operate and manage people, manage money, understand where your risks lie, you can pretty much operate some other businesses than one may think. So that's my brief background. Been here with the taxi business, and the taxi business has changed over the last 10 years since I've been here. When I first came on board, we at Texas Taxi operated almost 4,000 taxis throughout the state of Texas. And the taxi business had a different flavor, a different twist. And we provided about 95% of the ground transportation in and out of the airport, hotels, cab stands, etc. Then the TNCs came through, and they made their headway and progress into the environment, and that basically reduced us by 50%. So there was a lot of areas that seen some markets we've seen bigger than 50%, some less than 50%, but on average it's about 50%. And we were able to manage. We've made a lot of reductions in our business format, our operating structure, particularly around our call center. We started bringing in a lot of different technologies into our business to help us be more efficient. Again, around our call center, which at one time, Andrew, we had 3 different call centers in 3 different locations. And then we started using some technology and having a call center that was in one city handle the calls for other cities. And before you know it, we were able to kind of condense those. And then in the last 4 years, we opened up a nearshore call center in Medellin, Colombia, which we offer services not only to the taxi cab industry, but some other industries. And it's a bilingual call center. They're 24/7. They're staffed. We have over 40 employees there. And they handle about 90% of our telephone calls that don't hit your IVR system. And they do a lot of other things other than just answer the phone call. They do a lot of back end work for us. So we've been, that's one of the efficiency pieces that we've been able to put in place and continue to operate.
Well, I think it speaks to your background, John. Like you said, you've learned business principles, which I think, it's interesting. You look at the taxi industry in North America, most of us have come from different verticals, different markets, different industries. And so I definitely would say that you've applied those well to Texas. But I think the call center is a great example because although you guys you're not as big as probably you once were, particularly, in a post-COVID time, you guys have really diversified your business verticals, your revenue sources, right? So you've got the call center. I know you guys have expanded into NEMIT paratransit. There's a bunch of kind of different avenues that you're playing in. Is that correct?
Yeah, so, the typical pick up the phone, Mrs. Smith needs picked up and take her from point A to point B is still there, but it's not as prevalent as was. We've got into more medical, Medicaid, Medicare transportation, non-medical emergency transportation pickups have been a play that we've been able to work and continue to grow into. And we see that as one of the areas, not only with some of the Medicaid, state Medicaid providers, but also some of the city's public transportation pieces, whether here in San Antonio, it's via Capital Metro in Austin or Metro in the city of Houston. We've been able to provide on-demand service, wheelchair service, overlay service. They have subsidy programs. So these are some of the other areas that we've been able to evolve within and try to keep our cars busy, our drivers, which are all independent contractors, keep them busy and continue to earn a livable wage.
So just to kind of double back on something, because I really want people to understand, obviously you guys are a large fleet. It's run very much like an enterprise business, but to give people an idea of the scope, how many cities are you operating in currently today?
Yeah, we operate here in Texas in 6 cities. Our 3 main cities are San Antonio, Austin, and Houston. We have 2 operations, one in Galveston, one in Pasadena, and we also operate in the Rio Grande Valley, which is deep South Texas.
Sure. Well, and technically then you've got the call center in Medellin as well, because that's not specifically tied to your business, right? You guys have onboarded or can onboard other fleets. So that's also almost a whole another operating division for you guys.
That's totally a separate business entity. It's called Vehicle for Hire Services. And we do have some other outside contractors or other taxi cab companies that do use us for overflow work. Maybe they don't want to man their call center at night. They switch their calls to us. And it's a lot easy because, a lot of them are on iCabbi. So the dispatchers there know the platform and how it works, as well as switching the phone system with our DIS network goes pretty efficiently.
Sure. Well, you guys, as I said before, you guys have got to be a great partner, because really, I think what you've been able to do is to identify and take advantages of opportunities as they present themselves in your different markets. So I can't think of a better partner, to be honest, for those fleets to kind of be leaning on in this, especially with the current circumstances. So one thing I kind of wanted to ask you about, and obviously there's some relevance here for us, but you have talked, I've heard you mention a couple of times, you've talked quite a bit about technological changes, trying to improve processes, trying to automate things. And I'm curious to know, having been involved with this project for quite some time, but really to take a step back, what was kind of the reason or the incentive to move over to iCabbi? Why did you choose our platform versus some other competitors, and what made you decide to make the switch now?
Another good question. Well, we did a lot of research and due diligence. Myself and a few other people on our team kind of went out to the industries, looked what was out there, evaluated the products, kind of did a side by side, literally made a spreadsheet of what the product is, a lot about the technology, the various aspects of the technology, how much they're working to develop and continually listen to the customer and redevelop into the app or into the solution to help meet our demands. And when we kind of put all that together and then, looked at the bottom line, the numbers, it was very clear, very evident that iCabbi was a standalone system within itself was the best choice. Above and beyond that, initially, your leadership, starting with Bob Nixon, who maintained a very close communication with myself, and made some outreach to us to help us, was impressive by your leadership and your senior management team. So I want to commend them and their staff, because that was also a decision, is the management people. Okay, we don't want to deal with people that on selective time zones. I realize your operations are overseas, but I can pick up the phone and be on them, and the support network is instantaneously. So we look deep into your technology. We look deep into what the future looks like in your technology, and it just paralleled our growth and someone we wanted to partner up with.
Definitely appreciate the feedback, especially coming from you guys as a customer. I know you and I worked pretty closely on this project, and I mean this in the best way possible. But because of your background, you're a challenging customer. You have the systems engineering background. I say that somewhat facetiously, but you knew what you were looking for in the system. You knew what you were looking for from a technological partner. And you also were looking for a way to evolve with your system. So it was making sure that we lined up all those pieces. So to hear that feedback is really, it's meaningful, and I appreciate that. And it's interesting, it kind of begets another question where I'm curious to hear, we kind of did your implementation really right in the middle of COVID, right? I mean, everything was shutting down, it was locking down. Thankfully, we missed the giant snowstorm, but we really were kind of rolling this out in the midst of a global pandemic. And you guys, as you mentioned before, have a big footprint: 6 operating cities, a remote call center. So I'm curious to hear your feedback, because we predominantly did your go live remotely, right? And it was probably, will say that Texas Taxi's go live was the largest remote go live that we've done to date. But I'm curious to hear what that experience was like for you, transitioning, almost entirely again remotely throughout this pandemic. What was that like for you and the team?
Yeah, that was, well, it started with a good planning phase. We wanted to make sure we understand all the touch points that we needed to evaluate, because we were with our prior dispatch system, which was a good system. We were very connected in different avenues, backstream with our accounting system, with reporting systems, some of our paratransit people. So there was a lot of connective tissue that touched. So we wanted to make sure we understood that, and we understood what the effects would be and how would we change those. So that took a lot of due diligence and work through with your team. And then we decided that during the pandemic, when things were slow, this was literally the best time. When drivers had parked their car, business was slow. We thought it was the best time to move forward. And then we took a methodical approach about doing city by city by city, and just basically coming on board and doing the removal and then the install. And to be honest, the install historically would take, with our prior dispatch system, would take several hours, long hours, wiring, etc. It literally, this system we can put in a new car, in less than an hour. And as far as troubleshooting and maintenance, it's very easy. The issues that, if we see any issues today, it's usually user error, because we have tablets. So it went very well. You had a very good install instructor, Wayne O'Fogarty, who was on deck, on site. We had meetings throughout the entire process. He did do a lot of hand holding, and I think I held his hand too, because nothing's easy, but we got through it and through it together. There were some tough points, but he said, "Trust me, this will go through." And he actually came up with some very good suggestions on some dispatch parameters and process that we were unaware of, that through his experience we've implemented, that really help us with some efficiencies on our fleet.
Well, and we still got to get him a pair of cowboy boots. He's not made that, trying to get him some. So
yeah. Quick side note here. The boy shows up to our Austin office with skinny jeans on and some funky shoes. And I took a picture and I sent it to Bob. I'm like, really? He's like, please, in his Irish accent, look out for the mate.
Well, it made it throughout the internal Slack channels, and at some point somebody's going to get him a pair.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get a pair of Ariats down to him here shortly. But no, we appreciate the feedback, and I would share the same sentiment. I think you guys have a ton of experience, and there's a ton of knowledge within your team, and we were able to learn about different ways that we could function, different ways we could configure dispatch. We definitely pushed the limits of the system on this project, which is really cool, because we start to learn new things that the system is capable of. Right. I definitely agree that the hand holding went both ways. I think you guys were phenomenal at driving this project along and making sure that, we were hitting benchmarks and targets. So, and that's how we want it to be. We want it to be a collaborative effort, a joint effort. I think that those are the ones that work the best. And again, it was a great learning experience as well, because we were able to go and say, okay, look, we're going to do a scaled implementation across multiple cities, and that really challenged us to perform. And so I think, again, a lot of great outcomes out of that, and to be piggybacked off the back of that. So I'm curious to know how it's been since the implementation. So you've obviously gone through an insane snowstorm, lockdowns that we thought would go on for much longer than possible. So what's it look like today? How's your experience, sitting here 4, 5, 6 months later?
Yeah, no, it's gone extremely well. The one thing that I can say is the reliability. We have virtual servers that you guys have hooked us into. If an issue does come up, whether it's a phone system or anything that's very rare, it's immediately looked at and upon and reviewed. Like I said, the install of the system itself is very easy. It takes longer to have the drivers, to explain to drivers how the system works than it does to do initial install on these vehicles. It's very good. Some things that I would caution other people on is we have a credit card processing system where we bought these particular Ingenico credit card processors a few years ago, and we made a big investment in that. And we went through all the security checks, and we wanted to maintain those. In addition, we have some clients that use specific cards that have specific codes, and certain readers do not read those codes. So the biggest challenge, in my opinion, in this project was not the install. It was the integration with the credit card processing system. And, in hindsight, I would have probably, it would have probably been better off for us to go out and buy new credit card processors that work via Bluetooth, and bang, it's done, versus taking these old ones, repurposing them, and making sure that they work. But there was, like I said, there were some back-end issues. We do have some clients, particularly in our Houston location, that use a specific card that only a very few credit card readers can read. But that was one of our biggest challenges, and it's still, because we have these credit card processors, and we have to go through an encryption key and get them coded correctly, and they have to format. But I think we've got the process worked out fairly well now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think it goes back to your point, John, about cross-learning, where we kind of came in and said, okay, as part of the implementation process, what do we want to replicate, both as a software provider and as a business, and what do we want to throw out and get rid of? And again, I think we got the payment processing to a place where we figured it out, and we sorted out the problems, and we made changes and adjustments on the way. But it definitely speaks to the importance of doing the appropriate scope, like we talked about at the beginning, and then also kind of our teams feeding off of each other to say, look, what does the ideal outcome look like, right? There's certain reasons that we want to change the way that we're doing things today. And also, again, we as a company can come in and learn and see and understand, because you guys, as an example, gave us a great template for how private label cards, as they're known, the proprietary cards, can work across different markets, and the different things that you're doing with them, and the way that they've been integrated into your infrastructure. So it wasn't necessarily us coming in and saying, okay, John, Texas Taxi has to throw this process out. It's like, how do we tweak this, as excellent or as optimal as possible? So it's definitely a great learning experience. And I think it goes back to the point of, at the beginning, let's understand what we want the outcome to look like, which again, I think you guys gave us great feedback on. So I want that kind of leads me to another question I wanted to ask you. I'll move off of the iCabbi centric questions a little bit here, because I think you're a very good resource for taxi fleets in general to learn from. You guys, again, as I mentioned, have done a great job of building an enterprise business and diversifying your revenue streams, and really, evolving as your market has changed. And so I kind of wanted to pick your brain and see, looking out over the next 3, 5, 7 years, how do you think that the taxi landscape is going to evolve? Where do you see the changes happening? And maybe if you want to share as well, what are you guys doing to position yourselves to take advantage of some of those changes?
Yeah, well, it all starts with your management team. You got to have good management people that are continually working with the drivers, with the fleet, maintaining your fleet, whether it's the cleanliness of your cars, the orientation program of your driver, providing customer service, because nothing beats good quality in customer service. Whether you're in a yellow car, a blue car, a green car, whatever it is, driver A shows up on time, gets into a clean vehicle, driven safely and efficiently from point A to point B and charged a fair rate. That speaks volumes for itself. So those are your best assets out there to help promote your business. And instilling that process to your employees, to your independent contract drivers, as well as the people that maintain your fleet is key. As far as the future growth, man, I really wish I had a crystal ball. We do see a technology playing a piece, being efficient. And we also see a shift towards more paratransit, non-medical emergency transportation pickup service, more contract work with Medicare, Medicaid. We're in an interesting program right now with another technology partner called RideCo, where we do a rideshare program. It's replaced some of the fixed route bus services. And you know that because we're running the trips and communicating to the drivers through the device in the car, their taxi cabs. So that's a big technology piece that we see growing and expanding because it's a cost savings and it's an efficiency savings for the cities. So those are some of the categories or silos I see the taxi cab business growing. We'll still have some airport business. It's not going to be anywhere near the level it once was. We're still going to have hotel and cab stand pickup business. And those are all good fill-in work. But I think someone to maintain a good size, healthy fleet of 300, 400 vehicles, they do need to have a good footprint in the paratransit, Medicaid contract business that provides support and strategic services to the city.
Well, and I think also too, the way that you guys evolved, it's also not necessarily being afraid to take on new markets, right? Because you've expanded, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, but also down south. And even though those fleets may be smaller than the traditional ones, you're finding niches where you guys can kind of fill a void that really isn't getting serviced or supported there. So
we've been asked by a couple regulators and elected officials in the state of Texas, would we consider, providing service in specific areas of Texas, and we're still evaluating that. We still make that reach over there. So.
Well, you guys have, it's been cool to watch because again, I know some of these kind of smaller or newer fleets were kind of coming around the same time that we were getting involved with your business, but it's been very refreshing to see somebody say, look, I'm going to expand out of where I will traditionally service and kind of take on these new business opportunities. So, again, I think you kind of touched on this because I agree with the sentiment about culture. I think it's, what we've seen with Texas where it's really made you guys very successful. Obviously, you have a great management team in place. We can attest to that. We worked with them through the go live of the process, but also setting up the culture of success and sort of the buy-in from the drivers and making sure that, you've created a culture of innovation, which again, I think pushes Texas Taxi along. But, again, if we could, as we kind of this out, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to taxi operators in North America today, what would you say?
Yeah, well, there's that's a short question, but it's a big answer. I just think they need to kind of look at every day with a positive attitude. Look at every day, eyes wide open, and figure out where can I provide the best value to the driver, to the community, and make it happen. By having a technology piece, it's that iCabbi has allows us to. I can feel comfortable talking to a particular potential customer and we can do that. We can make that happen. And immediately I'm on the phone with Wayne. Hey, Wayne, I want to make sure we get this done.
Yep.
So it's having a proactive approach, I think, is what the taxi cab operators of today's world need to do. You can't sit back and say, hey, I got a 10-year-old car. We're going to sit at the airport for 6 hours and get one trip. You have to be proactive. You have to go out and find business. You have to, put the time into it, and figure out what's best for the community. So one point I want to circle back to, Andrew, is on the implementation side. You reminded me. I think I sent a picture to Bob. We took introducing this to the fleet. We said, hey, here's what we're thinking about. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we want to do. We want to get some of their input and some of their feedback on the setup. We took an old taxi cab and I cut the dashboard out, steering wheel and the dashboard. And it was about 4 foot long, and I put it on a nice stand so it stood freestanding. I even put a piece of plexiglass to simulate the windshield, and I put the device, the iPad, or not the iPad, the tablet in the holder right there up front. And we got a working, and we put new camera systems in our car. So I put all the jewelry, I call it, on the dashboard, and it was a fully functional model that I allowed everyone, to come in and look, and they could test them, and we still use it for training. And I sent Bob a picture, and if you guys want me to, if somebody wants to look at it, I can ship them one, or I can take them. You can show them pictures, and they can build their own. But it was interesting.
I may have you ship that to us, because I think I would, again, what's what's interesting about that, John, is like what was great about working with you guys is that you guys were really, it goes back to your sort of your concept of creating a culture where it's like there's 100% buy-in, particularly from the driver base. And it's like, okay, what can we do to train them as optimally as possible? And I think very often, from a driver perspective, you have to experience that, right? It's got to look as much. There's for whatever reason, it's very difficult to train in sort of an intangible, here's a PowerPoint, whatever it is, go back and try and replicate this in the car. When you can show them on an end-to-end piece, that is, you're able to drive the training experience, and it's much more. It just
makes things sell a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure the drivers appreciate that, because now they're like, okay, get into a car, I have no idea what to do. So I would say, I mean, and again, in sort of an extension of my last question, you guys could probably run a masterclass on what North American operators should be doing today. So that being said, is it okay if we have our customer base reach out to you if they have questions, if they want to speak to you about a call center? We can connect you with them.
I'd love to talk to the customer base about, my experience, what to do, what to look forward to, what's the pitfalls. When I did the due diligence, I did talk to 1 or 2 operators, and they were helpful, and they shared a lot of information. I did get some information, but actually kind of going through multiple fleets and different size operations, maybe I can give them a little bit more information. And I definitely want to tell them about our call center operation, how it can save them money, maybe offload their call center opportunities at night, pick up overflow work, and it's bilingual. They speak Spanish. And they are in the same time zone. Not that makes a difference, because it's 24/7. So, there's a lot of uptick there for a client to look at that and understand and use it.
Yeah, no, you guys have done a great job, having worked with them directly again through the implementation. So can't say enough good things about it. So yeah, we'll make sure that any customers that want to speak to you about either, like I said, get the feedback, because I think, again, anybody listening to this, John and the Texas team have been phenomenal and are one of the forward thinkers within our industry. They're very much pushing the boundaries with what a taxi fleet looks like in 2021. And there's a lot of lessons that can be learned. So all that said, John, thank you so much for the time. I very much appreciate it.
Thank your viewers, awesome. And continue to do good work.
We'll keep trying, man. You guys do the same, and we'll catch up again shortly. Thanks.
Take care. We'll talk soon.